Everyone in the galaxy believed humans were weak, short-lived, and emotionally reckless. No one believed a human could wait 10 years in silence. No one believed love could become a weapon powerful enough to change interstellar history. And no one, especially her, knew what this quiet human had been preparing for all along. The marriage hall above Virelis Station shimmered with artificial stars. Floating light orbs drifted like slow galaxies, reflecting off crystal walls grown rather than built. This was not a place meant for humans. It never had been. Yet Elira Voss, daughter of the influential Aurelian Concord, stood at the center of it all. Her skin carried the soft silver-blue glow of her species, smooth and flawless beneath ceremonial light. Her eyes, tall, almond-shaped, and bright with layered perception, saw more colors than any human could imagine. Long threads of bioluminescent fabric flowed behind her like a living comet. She was calm, controlled, certain. This marriage was logical. That was what she told herself. Standing beside her was Jonah Reed, a human. No noble blood. No enhanced genes. No political name worth recording in galactic archives. He wore a simple dark suit, custom-fitted but unadorned. No medals. No decorations. Just clean lines and steady posture. His brown eyes remained focused forward, his hands still, his breathing slow. To most of the gathered species, he was invisible. To Elira, he was acceptable. The union had been proposed as a symbolic alliance, a gesture of trust between humanity and the Aurelian Concord. Humans were useful now. Creative. Dangerous when cornered. Worth binding. Jonah Reed was chosen because he was safe. At least, that was the belief. The officiator's voice echoed softly. Ancient words of binding flowed through the chamber, translated instantly across species. Elira barely listened. Her thoughts drifted back 10 years. The Interstellar Diplomatic Academy orbited a dying star, an intentional reminder that civilizations rose and fell without mercy. It was where the galaxy trained its future leaders. Elira had been exceptional even then. She walked with confidence, her status clear in the way others stepped aside. Professors praised her insight. Alien students competed for her attention. And Jonah Reed. He had sat 3 rows behind her. Always. Human students were rare at the academy. When they appeared, they were watched like experiments. Jonah never tried to stand out. He dressed plainly. Spoke only when asked. Observed everything. Elira remembered him only vaguely. A human male with quiet eyes. A human who listened more than he spoke. Once, during a xenopolitics debate, a professor had dismissed humanity's emotional instincts as a weakness. Jonah raised his hand. Emotion isn't the opposite of logic, he said calmly. It's data. Humans just learned how to read it. The room had gone silent. Elira remembered feeling annoyed. Humans were not meant to speak with confidence in that room. Later that day, she overheard laughter, students mocking Jonah's accent, his lack of neural implants, his short lifespan. He said nothing. He never did. But Elira noticed something else then. He kept showing up. Every lecture. Every simulation. Every crisis exercise. Always prepared. Always present. And always watching her, not with hunger or ambition, but with something quieter. Something patient. Do you accept this union? The officiator asked. Elira turned her gaze to Jonah. Up close, he looked older than she remembered. Not weaker, just seasoned. Fine lines traced his eyes. His expression was calm, but something deeper rested behind it. Resolve. I accept, Jonah said. His voice carried no hesitation. Elira paused only briefly. I accept, she replied. The binding light flared, sealing biometric and legal recognition across more than 40 systems. Applause followed, measured, polite, diplomatic. The galaxy had just witnessed something historic. Elira believed it was politics. Jonah knew it was something else. She didn't know that Jonah had memorized Aurelian body language to avoid offending her people. She didn't know he had learned 4 alien dialects because her species valued precision. She didn't know that every promotion he earned in the Human Systems Defense Coalition had been calculated, not for glory, but placement. Close enough to matter. She didn't know that while others saw him as simple, human intelligence agencies quietly classified Jonah Reed as strategic anomaly, emotional intelligence class. She didn't know that 10 years ago, he had fallen in love with someone far beyond his reach. And instead of chasing her, he built himself into someone the galaxy would one day need. As the ceremony ended, Elira leaned slightly toward him. "This arrangement will benefit both our peoples," she said formally. Jonah met her gaze. "Yes," he replied softly. "It will." She didn't hear the promise beneath those words. But soon, the entire galaxy would. The galaxy celebrated the marriage as a success of diplomacy. News channels across dozens of systems replayed the ceremony from every angle. Commentators spoke of unity, symbolism, and progress. Analysts praised the Aurelian Concord for graciously accepting a human into noble lineage. Very few mentioned Jonah Reed by name. And none understood what had truly changed. Elira Voss settled into married life with practiced composure. For her people, marriage was not about affection but alignment. Bonds were tools. Partnerships were leverage. Emotion was secondary. Jonah made no effort to challenge that belief. He adapted. Their shared residence aboard Virelis Prime was elegant but quiet. Elira worked late into artificial nights, preparing diplomatic responses, reviewing security briefs, and managing interspecies politics. Jonah never complained. He handled logistical tasks without being asked. He learned Aurelian household customs. He memorized social rituals that even some nobles ignored. When Elira spoke, he listened. When she was silent, he respected it. That unsettled her more than anything else. Most beings tried to impress her. Jonah never tried at all. One evening, Elira returned later than expected. Council debates had dragged on, again. As she entered the residence, she paused. There was warmth in the air. A scent she did not recognize. Jonah stood near the cooking unit, sleeves rolled slightly, focused on a pan of real ingredients. "What is this?" she asked. He glanced over, surprised. "Dinner. You didn't request synthesized nutrition." "I wanted to make something," he said simply. Humans believe food prepared by hand carries meaning. She watched him quietly. His movements were controlled, careful, deliberate. Nothing wasted. Nothing rushed. "You learned this?" she asked. "Yes. On Earth." She hesitated. Then Saturday. That was the first meal they shared without obligation. Something shifted, small, unnoticed, but real. Outside their home, the galaxy was changing. Far from Concord space, the car Dominion was moving. Ancient, aggressive, and endlessly patient, the car had been testing borders for centuries. They never attacked outright. They probed. Trade relays failed. Patrol routes went silent. Independent systems vanished into uncertainty. The Concord Council argued. The Human Coalition watched. Jonah Reed received encrypted briefings daily. He read them carefully. Responded briefly. Always in private. Elira noticed the messages but said nothing, at first. "You receive frequent communications," she finally observed. "Yes." "From human command." "Yes." She studied him more closely now. "You are not merely a symbolic spouse, are you?" Jonah met her gaze calmly. "Neither are you." The answer unsettled her more than she expected. At the Concord Council, Jonah remained mostly silent. Nobles spoke over him. Delegates ignored him. Even allies treated him as a formality. He allowed it. During one session, discussion turned to rising car activity. Voices grew sharp. "We cannot provoke them," one noble argued. "They exploit our restraint," another countered. Then someone laughed. "And what does humanity suggest?" the noble sneered. "Emotional responses? Reckless improvisation?" Jonah stood. The chamber fell silent, not from respect, but surprise. Elira turned sharply. Humans were not meant to speak without invitation. "May I?" Jonah asked calmly. After a pause, the council allowed it, out of politeness. Jonah activated a projection. Fleet movements appeared. Trade routes. Population centers. "You see chaos," he said evenly. "Humans see pattern." The display shifted. Car expansions always begin with testing. They stop only when resistance becomes unpredictable. A murmur spread. "You think chaos deters them?" a noble scoffed. "No," Jonah replied. "Adaptation does." He adjusted the display again. Humans evolved on a hostile world. Climate. Predators. Disease. We learned early that survival is not about strength. He paused. It's about changing the rules. Silence followed. Even Elira felt something tighten in her chest. Jonah finished calmly. "Grant humanity limited authority in the border sectors. Not command. Flexibility." The council debated briefly. Then approved a trial. Elira realized something in that moment. Jonah had not spoken to dominate. He had spoken to protect. That night, Elira confronted him. "You planned that," she said. "Yes." "You let them dismiss you." "Yes." "Why?" Jonah met her gaze steadily. "Because humans survive best when underestimated." She searched his face. "You are not simple." "No," he agreed quietly. For the first time, uncertainty crept into her certainty. 3 days later, the first systems went dark. No announcement. No declaration. Just silence. Jonah Reed read the alert alone. And knew the waiting was over. The silence from the border systems lasted exactly 7 minutes. Then the alarms began. Across Concord space, emergency channels lit up. Trade relays failed in sequence, not randomly. Patrol fleets vanished without distress calls. Civilian traffic was rerouted into chaos. The car Dominion had stopped testing. They were advancing. Elira stood in the private command chamber of Virelis Prime, staring at the incoming data. Her fingers moved quickly, activating council alerts, requesting confirmations, demanding answers that did not arrive fast enough. "They're moving faster than projected," she said. "This isn't a probe." Jonah stood beside her, calm in a way that felt almost unreal. "No," he agreed. "It's a declaration without words." Elira turned sharply. "The Concord Council must convene immediately." "They will," Jonah said. "And they'll debate until the car reach the inner lanes." Her jaw tightened. "You speak as if you've seen this before." Jonah met her eyes. "Humanity has." Within the hour, the Concord Council assembled in emergency session. Panic hid poorly behind ritual and formality. Nobles spoke over one another. Old alliances were invoked. Old fears resurfaced. Elira took her place, composed but burning inside. "The car advance cannot be met with indecision," she said firmly. "We must authorize joint defense immediately." A senior noble rose. "To place our fleets under human influence would be reckless." Jonah stood before Elira could stop him. The chamber quieted again, not from respect, but tension. "Not influence," Jonah said calmly. "Coordination." A noble sneered. "And what qualifies you, human, to direct interstellar defense?" Jonah didn't raise his voice. "Because while you argue," he said evenly, "the car are mapping your hesitation." He activated a projection. It showed something none of the council had noticed. Human civilian vessels, unarmed, unmarked, moving into abandoned trade lanes. Sensor ghosts forming patterns. False signals blooming across empty space. "What is this?" Elira asked quietly. "Human redundancy," Jonah replied. "We never rely on one system. Or one plan." The projection shifted again. Car fleets slowed. Confusion rippled through their formations. "They expect fear," Jonah continued. "They expect retreat. They do not understand deception built from improvisation. A pause. Then Elira spoke, surprising herself. I support immediate joint command under human tactical discretion. The chamber erupted. But the data did not lie. Authorization passed by the narrowest margin in Concord history. Jonah Reed became humanity's liaison to joint defense. And the car noticed. The first engagement did not look like a battle. There were no great fleets colliding. No heroic charges. Instead, car vessels chased signals that vanished. Their supply lines stretched thin. Their formations fractured. Human ships appeared briefly, then disappeared again. Elira watched from command, stunned. You're not fighting them, she said. Jonah nodded. We're teaching them uncertainty. But this cannot last forever. No, he agreed. It only needs to last long enough. For what? For them to make a mistake. They did. The car committed their primary assault fleet to what they believed was a human stronghold. It was empty. The trap closed quietly. Joint fleets surrounded the car force, not with overwhelming firepower, but precision strikes. Systems failed. Command vessels isolated. For the first time in centuries, the car retreated. The galaxy watched in disbelief. Humans had not won by strength. They had won by refusing to fight the expected war. Celebrations followed. Commendations. Praise. Political speeches. Jonah avoided them all. That night, Elira found him alone, watching the nebula rotate beyond the glass. You saved millions, she said. We delayed loss, Jonah corrected. That's different. She studied him. You planned this long before the marriage. Yes. Before me. He hesitated. Before the galaxy was ready to listen. Silence stretched. Then Elira asked the question she had been avoiding. Why me? Jonah didn't answer immediately. I noticed you at the academy, he said finally. Not because you were powerful. Because you listened, when others didn't. Her breath caught. You barely spoke to me. I was learning, he replied softly. Your people. Your values. Your silences. She turned fully toward him now. For 10 years. Yes. Elira felt something crack inside her composure. This marriage, you never told me it meant more. Jonah met her gaze steadily. I never assumed it would. Emotion rose in her chest, unfamiliar, sharp, frightening. You loved me, she said quietly. Jonah nodded. I still do. The words were not dramatic. Not demanding. Just true. Before Elira could respond, alarms sounded again. This time, closer. A car counterstrike, smaller, desperate, aimed directly at Virelis Prime. They're targeting the symbol, Elira whispered. Jonah was already moving. Then we defend it. Together, she asked. He looked at her, really looked. If you choose to. Elira straightened. I do. For the first time, not as a diplomat, but as his partner. And as the galaxy held its breath, the quiet human who had waited 10 years prepared to show everyone what humans did best when everything was on the line. They adapted. The car counterstrike came without warning. Not as a fleet. Not as an invasion. But as a blade aimed straight at the heart. Virelis Prime, the diplomatic hub, the symbol of unity, the place where a human and an Aurelian had been bound, lit up with emergency signals. Defense grids activated. Civilian shelters sealed. The station trembled as distant explosions echoed through space. They're not trying to conquer, Elira said, staring at the tactical display. They're trying to send a message. Jonah nodded. Fear travels faster than fleets. Joint command centers erupted into motion. Concord admirals barked orders. Human officers rerouted civilian traffic with brutal efficiency. The sky outside the station shimmered as shields flared under impact. They brought assassins, a human analyst reported. Stealth craft. Precision teams. Elira's pulse quickened. They're coming for leadership. And for symbols, Jonah added quietly. She looked at him. Us. For the first time since the war began, Jonah did not try to shield her from the truth. Yes. The car strike teams breached the outer ring within minutes. Not with overwhelming force, but surgical intent. They ignored power nodes. Ignored factories. Ignored fleets. They moved toward diplomatic quarters. Toward Elira. Human security teams responded instantly, but the car were ancient hunters, bred for close combat and psychological terror. They moved through shadows, adapting faster than Concord forces expected. Jonah pulled Elira behind a reinforced bulkhead as plasma fire scorched the corridor. "Stay here," he said. "No," she replied immediately. "I will not be hidden." He met her gaze, something fierce flickering behind his calm. "Then stay close." They moved together. Not as diplomat and spouse. As partners. Elsewhere, the Concord Council watched in horror as security feeds showed car forces advancing. "They're bypassing defenses," a noble cried. "They don't care about losses," another shouted. A human strategist leaned forward. "They care about breaking will." Jonah's voice cut through the noise, transmitted live. "Then we don't let them touch it." Inside the station, Jonah guided Elira through maintenance corridors only humans seemed to use. He moved with precision, memory guiding every turn. "You know this place," Elira said between breaths. "I helped design the emergency layouts," Jonah replied. "Years ago." She stared at him. "You planned for this." "For the possibility," he said. "Humans plan for worse days." A car unit rounded the corner ahead. Jonah didn't hesitate. He triggered an override. Gravity shifted violently. The car warriors slammed into the ceiling as the corridor inverted. Human Marines emerged from hidden hatches, neutralizing them in seconds. Elira watched, stunned. "This is not brute force," she whispered. "No," Jonah agreed. "It's preparation." As the battle raged, something changed across the joint fleets. Human ships began taking risks no algorithm would suggest. Concord vessels followed instinctively, trusting human calls that made no logical sense, until they worked. Car formations faltered. They had studied Concord doctrine for centuries. They had never studied human improvisation fueled by attachment. In the station's central atrium, the final car strike team broke through. Their leader, a towering figure of chitin and blade, stepped forward, eyes locked on Elira. "The symbol," it hissed. "The bond. Break it." Jonah moved in front of her without hesitation. "You want her," he said calmly. "You go through me." The car laughed, a harsh, alien sound. "You are fragile." Jonah smiled faintly. "So is the universe," he replied. He activated the final protocol. The atrium lights dimmed. Human-built resonance emitters hidden throughout the station came online, devices dismissed years ago as unnecessary redundancy. They weren't weapons. They were amplifiers. Human neural wave technology surged through the station, synchronizing every human mind in range. Fear sharpened. Focus aligned. Determination crystallized. Elira felt it like a pulse in her chest. "What is this?" she asked, breathless. "Human empathy," Jonah said. "Directed." The car froze, disoriented by the sudden flood of coordinated intent. In seconds, they were overwhelmed. Silence returned. The war ended not with a treaty, but with understanding. The car withdrew. They did not announce defeat. They simply stopped advancing. Across the galaxy, analysts struggled to explain it. How a species so young had forced an ancient power to retreat. The answer was uncomfortable. Humans did not separate emotion from strategy. They fused them. Days later, as repairs continued, Elira stood with Jonah beneath the station's restored starlight. "You could have told me," she said softly. "About loving you." "Yes." He looked away briefly. "I didn't want to make you a target before you chose." She stepped closer. "I was already one." Their eyes met. "For 10 years," she said quietly, "you loved me in silence." "Yes." "And you waited." "Yes." She placed her hand over his. "I see you now," she said. "Not as a symbol. Not as a human." "As what?" "As the most dangerous thing in the galaxy," she replied softly. "A human who cares." Jonah laughed quietly. "That scares everyone eventually." But the galaxy was not finished reacting. New alliances formed. New fears spread. And somewhere beyond known space, other civilizations began to whisper the same warning. Never underestimate a human. Especially one who loves. The galaxy did not change overnight. It never did. But something fundamental shifted in the weeks after the Car withdrawal. Borders stabilized. Trade resumed cautiously. Ancient powers that once dismissed humanity began requesting meetings. Quietly, carefully, and with far more respect than before. They did not ask about human weapons. They asked about human thinking. And at the center of many of those conversations stood Jonah Reed and Elira Voss. Virelis Prime slowly returned to normal. Damaged corridors were repaired. Defense grids remained active but quiet. Civilian traffic resumed its familiar hum. Yet the station no longer felt the same. Elira noticed it in small ways. How Concord officers now paused before dismissing human opinions. How joint fleets deferred to human tactical suggestions without argument. How the word simple vanished from descriptions of humanity. One evening, as artificial night settled, Elira stood beside Jonah at the viewing window, watching distant stars drift past. "They're afraid of you," she said. Jonah shook his head. "No. They're afraid of what they misunderstood." She considered that. And what was that? "That humans don't stop caring when it becomes inconvenient," he replied. "We get stronger." Elira turned toward him fully. "You changed the balance of power." He met her gaze. "No. I changed expectations." The Concord Council formally recognized the Joint Defense Doctrine weeks later. Humanity was granted permanent advisory status. Not symbolic, not limited. Equal. The vote was unanimous. That alone would have been unthinkable a year earlier. During the ceremony, a senior Concord noble addressed the chamber. "We believed strength came from longevity," the noble said. "From tradition. From restraint. We were wrong." The noble turned toward Jonah. "Strength can come from a species that loves fiercely, adapts relentlessly, and refuses to surrender hope." Applause filled the chamber. Jonah stood silently. Elira watched him with something far deeper than respect now. That night, they walked the quiet corridors of their residence together. "You never asked for recognition," Elira said. "No," Jonah agreed. "Recognition comes with expectations." She stopped walking. "And what do you expect?" Jonah hesitated, just slightly. "I expect honesty," he said. "And choice." She studied him carefully. "You gave me both." "Yes." "For 10 years," she said quietly, "you shaped yourself into someone the galaxy would need, without knowing if I would ever see you." Jonah nodded. "That was the risk." "And if I hadn't?" "I would still have done it," he said honestly. "Because it was right." Silence stretched between them, comfortable now, not uncertain. Elira reached out and took his hand. "This marriage," she said, "was never meant to be about love." "No," Jonah replied. She tightened her grip slightly. "But it became one." Jonah didn't speak. He didn't need to. Months later, a message arrived from the Car Dominion. Not a threat. Not a demand. A question. "How did your species endure such fear without breaking?" The human response was brief. "We didn't avoid fear. We shared it. Then we acted anyway." The Car never attacked again. Years passed. Humanity rose, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as something far more unsettling to the galaxy. Partners who could not be predicted. Allies who did not abandon each other. A species that turned emotion into strategy. New academies taught human doctrines. Alien officers studied human crisis models. Empathy became a tactical term. And at the center of many of those lessons was a quiet example. A human who waited 10 years. On the 10th anniversary of their marriage, Elira stood beside Jonah beneath real stars, far from stations, far from politics. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Waiting?" he asked. "Yes." Jonah smiled. "No," he said. "Waiting taught me who I needed to become." "And me?" she asked. He turned toward her. "You taught me who I was waiting for." Elira leaned into him, resting her forehead against his. The galaxy had once believed humans were weak. It had been wrong. Humans were dangerous not because they destroyed, but because they endured. Because they adapted. Because when they loved, they changed everything.